exciting tournament, and just watching some of these matches have come down to seconds and sometimes last minute falls to Ganon. It has been absolutely exciting to watch all these things, and it looks like we're off and ready to go.
All right, we got a couple of players in the Sanctuary where we have the Ether Medallion. 3 players picking that up, whereas Cookiepocalypse is starting off in Link's house. And the item there
looks like we have
mirror.
Cookiepocalypse going north.
So Cookiepocalypse taking a more traditional route, almost as if this was the escape in regular randomizer, not the open mode. And now over on the top right of your screen, Gus looks to be making a play for the Houlihan room to collect some early rupees.
Meanwhile, Smight looks like he's going for the tree pull and for the cave check to see if Aghanim it will be required.
Uncle just with a piece of heart, and the other chest in the escape is triple boom, 3 bombs.
It's always a good thing to get bombs early on so that when you check Kakariko Village, you don't have to go purchase any with the money that you may or may not even have.
And a check of the Lumberjack Cave by Smight looks like a piece of heart, so Aghanim at this point not required.
Smite's going to check Lost Woods, see what he can find there. We have a map check.
All 3 crystals in the Light World. Crystal 6 at Tower of Hera, if I'm not mistaken, so that is a crystal required for the Pyramid Fairy. And it looks like a couple of runners are now, or at least Cookie, making his way up into the Lost Woods, north of Kakariko.
JTB looks like he's going down to Kakariko Village to see what he can find there, but looks like he's going north instead first to check that tree in the cave.
Gonna take the Lumberjack loop around is JTB, as we have a purple, or beg your pardon, a red rupee in the Thieves' Cave, the hideout, I should say. So not too significant there, but you never know. I mean, those rupees early on, especially if you didn't go to Houlihan like Gus, those are very important as far as getting an item from the bottle vendor in Kakariko, so you'll take what you can get.
And it's always good to have a good storage of rupees right at the start of the game. Sometimes that points to Zora being a necessary visit.
So far, our most significant item is the mirror, which at this moment isn't terribly useful just because they don't have the Moon Pearl. But the Ether Medallion, we'll see how that comes into play later on. Although, again, we will have 3 pendants in the Dark World, so it's possible that those medallions will not be required at all.
Looks like Smight gets a sword down in the Thieves' Basement, and we'll see. Probably looks like he's going to go purchase some bombs to take care of the rest of that.
Yeah, not able to get into the back of the Thieves' hideout in Kakariko quite yet, whereas we see up on the top left, Cookie's doing that right now and is rewarded with just a blue rupee. Probably not what he was looking for there. As he picks up his sword, Smight picks up some bombs, and JTB is mining for bombs as he picks up some bushes.
And Smite's heading back up to take care of he's going into the bar first, and then he's going to take care of the probably other rooms with the bombs that are necessary. Only picking up 50 rupees from the back of the tavern there.
Yeah, not quite enough to get to the bottle vendor, but it'll help a little bit along the way, especially if he goes into the back of Thieves' hideout, as JTB is doing right now. It's a total of 35 rupees back there, so that's not exactly a whole lot of money, but at this early stage of the game, it's pretty useful.
And Cookiepocalypse only picking up a heart piece there in the well, and we'll see what else he gets. Gets 20 rupees and the hook shot.
Wow, that's the big item. Hook shot in the well of Kakariko. And the bottle
so we have
vendor
all 4 players right now in
a bottle from the bottle vendor. That's convenient. For Cookiepocalypse.
And of course, it opens up Tick Kid.
Yeah, exactly. So he'll be able to loop around nicely and knock out a whole lot of Kakariko.
A lot of players sometimes forget Tick Kid once they get that bottle, so it's pretty crucial that they got it early on in its vanilla location there.
The only thing that could make this more seamless and smooth is, say, if Sick Kid had, I don't know, a flute? That would be nice, because then you can knock that out right when you're in Kakariko Village. And activate that flute, get around the whole map a lot faster. As Gus is picking up his sword from the Thieves' hideout. JTB picking up that bottle. And just a red rupee from Sick Kid.
So far, all 4 of our runners here are cleaning up Kakariko Village. Nothing terribly exciting. I mean, we did get a bottle, and we did get the hook shot. And we'll see what happens when they move on to the next part of the map. I would assume some of them are going to go south and check out the race game and also the library.
Yeah, we'll see probably a library check, race game, and if the race game doesn't have anything significant, probably a save and quit, and then they'll check South Hyrule over by Mini Moldorm Cave and Swamp.
So Cookiepocalypse going into the library to see what he can find. Other than some books, only just 20 rupees.
Yeah, probably won't be coming back for that, I should think. I'd be a little surprised if, for whatever reason, they happen to need 20 rupees and the boots somehow led them there, but that would be interesting, but very unlikely. So we did see the save and quit from Cookie. Don't know, did he check the race game?
The race game looked like it only had rupees, but I would have to double check, and we're going to get a double check there from Smight now.
And it just
10 arrows from that race game.
So Cookie now going to be making his way into Hyrule Castle, going down into the dungeon and checking out what he can find down there. He'll be the first one exploring that area, so whatever he does find, it could give him an advantage over the other runners, although of course it's an area, it's free enough. They'll be checking it out at some point, especially now that they all have a sword.
Interestingly enough, JTB is going for those arrows on the race game as Smight is going to pull the dam and see what's underneath the water.
So we're getting a check at the dam, and it's flippers. That's big time for Smight. So now, no fake flippering. There won't be any sequence breaking in that regard, so there could be a progression item there.
So it makes you wonder if Smite's going to go up to the waterfall or just wait until he has enough rupees to check Zora and the waterfall and just the heart piece underneath the dam, which Smight is ignoring. Looks like he's heading to Mini Moldorm Cave.
And there's 5 chests coming up in Mini Moldorm Cave, so an opportunity to collect some rupees for, say, a Zora check.
We got Cookiepocalypse doing the escape, the first part of escape here, and only picking up a few bombs and some keys on his way down to the jail level of that escape.
Exactly. So one more chest for him to discover on this portion of the escape as JTB picks up the flippers. Doing nicely with the mirror there to evaporate that block, or at least skip over it.
Ooh, and we have the gloves and the cane of Burna in the Mini Moldorm Cave.
So Power Glove and a safety item that can be useful in a couple of areas in the game as far as the cane of Burna goes. And Smight going to continue to make the way around all the way up to Ice Rod Cave, it appears.
And soon enough, JTB will be getting his 2 items there, the cane of Burna and his power gloves.
I did not happen to see what was in the chest of Zelda's cell. It doesn't look like it was anything that got put onto the tracker. So no advantage there for Cookie, as he'll be the last player to pick up his flippers after Gus does so right there. Now
we have Smight going into Ice Rod Cave here.
And just 10 bombs. Or a bomb upgrade, I should say.
Looks like JTB is going to check out the hobo and probably what's on the island there.
A good play to be making. He's going to forget about the Ice Rod Cave for now, as you just see a 5-arrow upgrade on the ledge or on Hylia Island. But again, because they do have flippers, early flippers, you always want to check out the hobo pretty soon after that, because he could have a progression item as Gus makes his way through Mini Moldorm Cave.
Smight too is going to check the hobo, and I've seen a lot of races where that hobo actually does have a very crucial item, so it's been interesting to see what we have here.
Let's see. Just a red rupee.
Oh man, it's disappointing to see that hobo just have a little bit of cash or anything that's not super progression crucial, but looks like JTB is headed out, as will Smight soon, and Gus is heading toward the hobo as well.
So all these players more or less on the same path right now, a little bit apart in terms of maybe 1 or 2 things they've checked. The main difference right now being that Cookie took the time to check Hyrule Castle. And we're going to go get at least a waterfall check. Not enough rupees to pay up to Zora. But JTB looks like he wants to get those 2 chests out of the waterfall.
That warp could be a little tricky coming from South Hylia Lake into the waterfall, so JTB's back now getting his check into the waterfall as Smight heads into that warp as well.
It can be a little unwieldy as JTB picks up bombs and a shovel. Fetch quest item.
Early fetch quest items are always a kind of a 50-50. Sometimes they'll yield you some great rewards in a progression item, and sometimes it'll just be a little bit of a letdown.
Now, though JTB cannot pay Zora, he can go get that ice rod if he so chooses, and not knowing, what Turtle Rock is, whether it's pendant or crystal, he's going to go make that play. The knowledge of knowing it was there probably would have been useful anyway, but he's going to go ahead and pick that up. It can be a useful weapon in the early game, although they do have a sword and a hook shot.
Not a bad play to go pick that up off the ledge early, even though, again, as you said, it's not super useful at all times, but it's good because there are some runners that do forget about that item and go, later on in the game.
So JTB making the long walk around, Smight hot on his heels, and of course, again, a reminder, at the bottom of your screen, JTB and Smight are racing each other, and Gus and Cookiepocalypse at the top are racing against each other. So, as far as that goes, we get a couple of save and quits. Cookie
looks like we might
here, not electing to pick up the ice rod. Go ahead, sorry, Prof.
No problem. JTB looks like he's going for the back of escape, which, I was thinking, what's your next move? What's your next move? And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, he has a lift upgrade and goes and decides to check the back half. 3 chests right here, blown open with the bombs, or boots if you happen to have them there. Cookie making
and Cookiepocalypse as well, making that same play.
It's the map, but he got a key. Now, no lantern, but that key can be used to get deeper into escape through the sewers and get 1 chest remaining, and it's a chest that you don't want to forget about, because if it has a progression item in it, you can be stuck for a long time.
And I have seen some runners try to do those dark rooms back into the sewers of escape, but it looks like none of our runners today so far will be making that play. Looks like JTB will be our first to check Sahasrala's hut to see what he's hiding back in the back storeroom there.
And I can't say I'm surprised that it took this long, but I think sometimes a lot of players maybe put it off a little bit too long, just because although you can't finish Eastern Palace without the bow, when you're getting a little bit stuck in terms of finding that item that's going to really progress the seed, there's roughly 6 chests here, and right away we see the Moon Pearl, which is going to be big in conjunction with the mirror.
Yeah, we almost have some Dark World access here, and I agree with you. A lot of people do avoid those dungeons early on, but V26, as I've heard time and time again, is that dungeon dip version. So it can be and it can't be surprising at the same time that people don't dip in this early.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how the versions of the randomizer have changed the taste and tendencies of the players. It used to be that, I think it was version 18, when they had the standard tournament over the spring and then summer, where you saw a lot of open world exploration. The emphasis was there, but it seems to have switched now, as you said.
It looks like Smight is going down to the front half of Escape as well, and Cookiepocalypse is about to get a very, very good surprise in getting that Moon Pearl from Sahasrala.
As you said, Cookie picking up the Moon Pearl, JTB, first one into Eastern, checking this far chest over here, the long walk. We'll see how he's rewarded, and it's the boots! What a perfect item for JTB.
Oh, the boots are an exciting find, and Gus hopefully is going to dig up something as well with his fetch quest item, and it's just bombs. So looks like he's probably going to head towards Sahasrala next.
And it was just a piece of heart in the dungeon cell. So nothing too rewarding there for Smight, who is going to make his way through the escape, the more traditional route here. So he'll be able to get to that chest, but he does not have the lamp. So it could be a bit difficult. We'll see how he does with that. As we now have 2 players in Eastern, as Gus is also making his way up to Hyrule Castle.
So far, it looks like the right side of Eastern Palace is just the big key, but that opens up some opportunities for our runners in Eastern Palace, and we'll see. Hopefully, it will hold another item for them.
Boots now picked up for Cookie, and he and JTB more or less making the exact same plays at this time. And Eastern, so far, the Sasha and Eastern trip has paid off, picking up the Moon Pearl and the Boots. Those are advantages they have over their opponents.
Smight is opting to do that dark room, which I always am very respecting of. That's a difficult play, but so far it looks like he's doing okay, although it's hard to tell.
It is hard to tell. We'll keep our eyes glued to that, but it might be difficult for us to ascertain what's really happening there.
On the left side, his opponent JTB also doing a bit of an easier dark room there in Eastern Palace to see what the hopefully what a key will be leading to a third item.
And Smight, hard to say there if he picked up the item. But he makes his way out of the sanctuary. We'll see where his next play is. Nobody's gone to the desert yet. Of course, they don't have access to the desert without the flute or a lift that can get them to the back side of the desert and without the book. But of course, Agina's cave is back there, and you can always check what's on the ledge just to have a look.
We did get the bow, though, the bow in Eastern Palace, which, if these runners would want to continue to maneuver some of these dark rooms, which looks like JTB wants to, they can complete Eastern Palace.
Well, that's a good eye there. I did not notice that, but JTB picking up the bow, was it in the big chest?
It was in the Master Key chest of Eastern Palace.
So not quite vanilla, but, close enough. I mean, picking up a bow in Eastern Palace is huge, because obviously now he can complete that dungeon, and, that'll go a long way to helping him in other dungeons as well. And these players can go up on Death Mountain, and it looks like that's the play for Smight, as JTB busts out the Cane of Berna to help him in that Eastern Dark Room. Not a bad play.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, pretty good play there, just to, take away all the uncertainty and make it a little bit less messy.
I'm enjoying the names the chat has for the bow location, including Neapolitan item locations. It's a white chocolate location. It's chat's always good for a good time there.
So would we say that was the Neapolitan or the chocolate location? I'm not sure how to suss that out.
I mean, I'm partial to strawberry location. If we're talking about those 3-flavor Neapolitan ice creams, I would say that would be the strawberry location, my preference.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who always, kind of carves out the strawberry from the chocolate and vanilla. I don't know if that's, I think that's probably frowned upon by a lot of people, but, I got to be honest with you, I prefer the strawberry. It's good stuff. But enough about that. We have a good play going on here with Smight, who is making his way up to Death Mountain after picking up those power gloves in Mini Moldorm Cave and having the hook shot from Kakariko. He's got quite a bit of access here. No hammer and no mitts yet, but still a couple of chests that he can check that other runners have not yet done.
Yeah, I don't disagree with this move. I think this is a good play. There's a lot of chests he picks up here as JTB finishes off the Armos Knights and gets a compass for his troubles, but also his first one marking the crystal on the board, so that's not a bad position to be in.
And the lantern in Agina's cave for Cookie. It seems like a relatively insignificant item at times, but having that can make those dark rooms just a whole lot faster and pain-free. So that's a nice item to get, especially before your competitor.
Yeah, it definitely frees up a lot of time so you don't have to fumble through the dark rooms, especially if you're not as used to them. So I would say that lamp is a pretty great item to have this early on.
All right, we got Dark World, or Death Mountain Hype Cave, beg your pardon. Smight, so far just a shield. Rupee and a couple of heart pieces, so nothing too hype there. A little bit deflating, really. He was having some problems with those mini Moldorms. I think not remembering that he had the hook shot.
We've seen some runs where that cave can be incredibly hype. I saw one that had 2, maybe even 3 sword upgrades, and sometimes they could just, hold some pieces of love and some money.
So now JTB, I think the last one to make the play here into the depths of Hyrule Castle. And we'll see what the old man has. I suspect Smight has already discovered what it is, but we'll see here on Cookie's screen on the top left. And just a little love.
We have Smight on the bottom doing Spiral Cave. Hopefully there will be something good to be found there.
Yeah, I suspect Cookie here in a couple of minutes at least will be making the same play, and it'll be much, much faster for them, given that they have the boots. Trying to get that hook shot speed off the ladder. There it goes, but nearly blocked by the dead rock.
Looks like Spiral Cave got 300 rupees, which does, I believe, open up Zora for Smight, so I'm wondering if maybe that'll be the next play he makes.
Yeah, it just needs a couple more, but that's a paltry sum. He can find 3 rupees, no problem. That'll be an interesting play, as right now they cannot get into Desert, and I believe, yeah, they can get into Hera. Yeah, that might be what Cookie's doing right now, actually.
Yeah, that absolutely looks like what a Cookie's play is, and not a bad play. You know, as we start to run low on item locations, you can reach. It's a pretty intelligent play to make to go into Hera at this point.
So Gus has picked up the bow, picking up a safety fairy. Now all the runners do have a nice little bit of insurance, as they have that blue goo that they got from the bottle vendor, which will restore their health and magic, and the hammer in Hera basement immediately mirroring out to complete the dungeon. Does have the lantern, so in case he needs to go down there to the tile room, and that's what's going to have to happen.
The hammer's a great item to have. It's going to be really key for him to have that when he's fighting, Troll Dorm, especially when you just have the fighter sword, which could be a very inept weapon in that type of fight.
So certainly no Aghanim now, it seems. And the tile room, I've heard mixed feelings about it. Nobody likes to go down there when they're in a race, unless they know they have to, in this case, to get a big key and complete the dungeon. But I've heard other players say that it's kind of a nice break, especially after you pick up such a big item like the hammer. Maybe take a few moments and consider what your next move is going to be. So Smight did not make the play for Zora, instead going into Eastern, which we know is going to pay off, picking up those boots right away. And here in not too long, we'll be getting that bow, hopefully. Gus looking to finish off the dungeon, defeating Armos Knights.
And Cookiepocalypse is about to pick up the boss key in the basement of Hera, so he's going to make his way up the tower there.
And there should be, I believe, one more item to collect in Hera.
Absolutely. So I wonder if if I were to put money on it, I would say it's going to be on Troll Dorm up there at the top.
And we'll see if if Cookie decides to deploy the newly found hammer, wants to mint that hammer on Troll Dorm. So Gus finishing off Eastern, saving, quitting, going to the Sanctuary. Looks like their next play is going to be up to Hera and Death Mountain. So interestingly, Smight had the Power Glove and the hookshot and decided to explore Spiral Cave and Eastern Death Mountain in the Light World, but did not make the play up to Hera.
And he was one of the few that also didn't make that early play into Eastern, but he's going to find very shortly that he's going to be very excited with what he discovers Eastern has to offer.
So Cookie kind of leading the way here in terms of making the correct call, getting up through Eastern and up to Hera before most of the other players. But Gus, his direct competitor, not too far behind, and JTB, saving and quitting. Did he check Bonk Rocks? I didn't see what happened there. I assumed he was on his way up to Hera and Death Mountain.
Chat, it looks like it's saying that there was a check on Bonk Rocks, and that was Bugnet. I did see Bugnet being picked up earlier. I just wasn't quite sure where the location was.
Well, that's nice. So these players do have a nice little collection of safeties. Not a terribly healthy seed so far, as they've yet to pick up a male, and only 6 hearts it looks like for most players, with the exception of Smight. So that'll be nice to have the Bugnet. They've got a bottle, they've got Burna. If they were to get half magic, then I think they'd be pretty comfortable with that.
And at this point, having the hammer, the gloves, and the moon pearl, Cookiepocalypse can dip into the dark world. Looks like he's probably going to do Spiral Cave first if he hasn't done that already.
So Gus looking for spin speed, which I understand is actually a little bit more difficult than getting hook speed, as he's going to enter Spectacle Rock and see what item is inside. Just the bomb upgrade.
Looks like all 4 runners are in the vicinity or on Death Mountain at this point. So, look, I stand corrected. Smight is in Eastern doing some of the dark rooms.
Smight having picked up his bow, looking like he's very close to finishing off Eastern Palace.
And Gus is heading into Tower of Hera, I would make the call, as JTB looks like he's coming out of the Spectacle Rock.
Going to the Ether Tablet, but unless he has the book, and I missed it, he didn't check it, and also, you need the Master Sword, I believe, to access the tablets.
Yeah, absolutely, you're correct on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting, because you just need a sword, it can be the fighter sword, I think, to use the tablets, or to use the medallions, I should say, but to access the tablet, you need the Master Sword of the book. And we see Gus picking up that hammer, gonna be pleased with that. Smight having a little struggle down there with Armos Knights, but still has 20 arrows, shouldn't be too difficult. Finishes it off, gets the compass, completes his first dungeon. As JTB's picked up the hammer, we'll be going down to Tile Room next. Doesn't seem terribly happy about it with the frustration slashes.
Gus leaving Tower of Hera, it looks like he's opting to perhaps do some Eastside Death Mountain. And yep, that looks like exactly what he's doing.
A little low on health, does have that blue potion, but not a position where, now the fairy of course is there and picks that up, a good play. Imagining that fairy hadn't been there, it's certainly not a position where a player wants to burn that potion. But able to get health back as he goes through Spiral Cave. Cookiepocalypse has come down off the mountain.
Looks like he may be making a play for Dark World there.
Yeah, getting up into Skull Woods, using that hammer and the glove to get that portal. So really positioning himself to pick up a lot of items in Thieves Town and the village.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the right play to make, going to the Dark World, and a lot of players will then once again to the Dark World go for Skull Woods, which again V26 really favors having an item there.
And we might get a check of the map here, see what we have. Pendant T-Rock Pendant Pod. I didn't see the other. But that green pendant was in pod, so that's one they may consider if they hit a wall in terms of their progression. But Pendant T-Rock, so the Ice Rod is not required. And I believe it was Cookie, actually, who saw that and elected to not go pick it up.
And chat is saying that the other pendant is Thieves, and Crystal is 5 at Mire.
So the other pendant is Thieves, and it's not the green pendant, but we see Cookie opening the door there anyway. Probably going to dip in and at least check the first 4 chests since they're so free.
Yeah, it's a great play to check Thieves this when you get into the Dark World, if not, Skull Woods, because it does have a lot of items, and the only thing is if the boss has that last item, it can sometimes be a bit frustrating for runners.
You see JTB with a bomb jump. He had the hook shot. Anyway, made it through first try, no problem. He'll be heading on up to finish off Moldorm, as we do get a trip into Thieves Town, picking up the big key right away.
Looks like Gus might be making a play for the Cave of Perpetual Disappointment, also formerly known as Hype Cave.
Right, formerly known as Hype Cave. We'll see what it's got in store for us today. It's Smight going to pick up his lantern from Agina. Full heart so far in Hype Cave. Arrows. Oh, the blue boomerang. What a gem. Well, it wasn't terribly exciting, Profe.
I would say that's the cave of mediocrity. I mean, those health upgrades are pretty key, having green mail in the Dark World this early, so I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, but not necessarily as hype as I'm sure Gus wanted it to be.
Yeah, JTB having a fall to Moldorm there. He'll get back up and try it again. He's got out the Cane of Berna. And we're going to see Berna strats with Moldorm. Just take the confusion out of the equation here.
That would absolutely be a first, seeing someone try to use Berna on Moldorm.
Another bug net picked up. That one for Smight.
Gus about to empty the dam, and it's been a while since a runner has done that, so Gus will be finding what's underneath there, which I believe was either a piece of heart or some rupees.
Now, I think he already opened that chest earlier. I think he knows it's the heart. Is he making a play into Swamp? He is.
Yeah, it looks like he's making an early play into Swamp, and again, not a bad idea. I've seen Swamp pop up as a as the holder of sort of a go mode item for a lot of matches, and people just do not like Swamp.
Yeah, people in a perfect world, a runner would prefer to have Swamp in go mode. But of course, that's not always going to be the case. There could be a key progression item in here that causes you to leave the dungeon, but given that the hook shot is available, Gus does not have the hammer on his tracker. It's possible that did not take that trip up to Hera. I've seen hammer strats on Argus before, I believe, but no fire rod. So a boss fight with Argus would be a little difficult, as Gus, again, a little bit low on health.
Yeah, so it looks like Gus will probably be double dipping into Swamp if he continues forward. Looks like he is going to do that, because without that hammer, Argus is I believe impossible to even fight at this point.
And Smight picking up the hammer in Hera. Well done by our trackers so far, by the way, in the name of DT and Flappykins, doing a wonderful job. Better than us, better than me, I should say, as far as keeping track of all the items with all four of these racers.
No, you're absolutely right, and certainly as we're entering another portion of our run, give our trackers a follow, our runners a follow, and if you like us, give us a follow too. But these trackers are taking on a Herculean task by having their eyes split 4 ways, that is for sure.
Oh, and an untimely death in Thieves Town just after getting the maiden. That red pony, I forget the name of that enemy, but just locking in with the fireball. It's very unfortunate. Cookie's going to stick with it, though.
It's unfortunate to have a death that far into Thieves Town, especially when you're about to unlock a blind. But, Cookiepocalypse is doing the brave thing and going right back at it.
Yeah, sticking with it. There's some that say once you start a pendant dungeon, you should finish it. And clearly there's incentive as there's still some items available.
Looks like nothing terribly exciting has been happening over in Swamp Palace for Gus, as he's going to continue to unlock different portions of that dungeon.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems that people have with dipping Swamp more than once, if you can help it at least, is that once you leave the area, you do have to drain it once again. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you have to all the switches in the palace are reset, and you have to go back and activate them once again, changing the water level.
And I think you're absolutely right on that. And Swamp Palace is definitely one of those dungeons that eats up a lot of time in what we'll call cutscenes there.
So it's a bit of a gamble. We'll see how it pays off. Could certainly be huge, because again, you don't expect a lot of people, when they have other options as far as even going into dungeons, to choose Swamp first. But again, that health is a little worrisome, down to 2 hearts.
Looks like JTB is going to make a play into the Dark World next, as Cookiepocalypse does pick up the maiden. He's making a run for the hammer room to see what's in the big chest.
Let's have a look. And chest bombs. Smight picking up the crystal from Moldorm, and again, that's a important crystal to get. That's crystal number 6, so that can unlock a couple more items at the Pyramid Ferry. Down to 1 heart for Gus as he goes to check out these 2 chests on the west side. A timely heart. We'll go across and see what else is in store.
Looks like Cookiepocalypse is about to open up the blind fight. And of course, we always have our pun at the beginning. And I gotta say, blind with green mail and fighter sword is a difficult challenge. So hats off to Cookiepocalypse on this move.
He's on to phase 3 with 3 hearts to spare. Does have that blue potion, blocking 1 fireball, taking another. Down to 1 heart. Needs 3 slashes. We'll see if he goes to his safety. Oh! Taking another death in Thieves.
The good thing about taking a death at the boss is at least Blind is there to greet you once more once you enter the dungeon again, which looks exactly like Cookiepocalypse is going to do at this point.
And JTB making a play into Swamp, or beg your pardon, Skull, as Smight checks out the not-so-hype cave with a save and quit afterwards. Nice bomb jump for JTB, checking out the big chest, and it's just the burrito.
It looks like Gus is making his way deeper and deeper into Swamp Palace to hopefully pick up. You have now 3 potential items, so hopefully one of those will be something worthwhile for him.
So Cookie on to phase 2 of Blind. I think if he gets down into a bad situation again, I imagine he's going to use that blue potion. I'm sure he doesn't want to, but you got to think it'll happen.
And he's got the Cane of Burna too as a safety.
And the Cane of Burna can damage Blind. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are correct.
All right. Well, that's good. 1 heart, 1 slash. Got it. Cookie, after a little bit of tribulation, able to finish off Blind, picks up 50 rupees and a blue pendant. So not a lot of worth in Thieves Town from what I was able to see, as we see JTB making a play in there as well, picking up his fire shield. Gus further into Swamp. I've not seen several of the last items picked up. He's going to go ahead and challenge Argus, though. We're going to see some expert menuing here, I think.
This is always one of the more frustrating fights when you're on a fighter sword and the hammer. So we do see a lot of menuing, and people do pull it off very skillfully, as Gus seems to be doing.
Yeah, it can be challenging. This is when people who have practiced their menuing and orientation of the menu certainly gain a bit of an advantage if they can cut down that menu time as much as possible.
And at this point, where you're this deep into Swamp Palace, it's not a bad play to just take Argus on and move on with your journey.
Yeah, especially because I think, as somebody in chat has pointed out, although it's a vexing dungeon to take on when you're not in go mode and you don't have like a tempered sword or at least a mastered sword, it's a crystal, so you probably want to go ahead and knock it out.
Meanwhile, on the left side, we have Cookiepocalypse doing the dig game, and JTB on the bottom there, it looks like, is making his way deeper into Thieves Town. Nothing exciting from the digging game, it seems, as Cookiepocalypse races away, probably to check Stumpy, I would imagine.
And on the bottom of the screen, we have both of those competitors going head-to-head, literally and figuratively, as they're both in Thieves Town. And the Argus fight into its final phase. The hammer delivers the decisive blow, and Gus picks up another shield, so we know that's the second shield that he's got, but the third shield is in Thieves Town, and every other player so far has picked up that one. So if Laser Bridge is required, I know they've got Burna, but that would also require a trip into Pendant T-Rock. So let's hope for our players' sake that that's not the case.
So I think we may have missed it. Did I just see correctly that there's a silver arrow pickup in Thieves Town?
I think I just saw that too, actually, out of the corner of my eye. I'm glad you said something, because I think that's the case, and our trackers are all over it. So there are now 3 players with silvers, everyone but Gus. So that is a big pickup, obviously, especially when you are still dealing with the fighter sword. They'll need 1 more sword upgrade to finish the game off, but when that's in doubt, nobody wants to do a Master Sword Silverless Ganon.
Smight doing the arrow game. This is, I think, the first time I've ever actually seen someone do the arrow game in a race.
Yeah, this is interesting. Trying to collect some rupees. Not quite sure what to make of this play, but I like it. I appreciate it. It's a fun little detour.
Yeah, no, this keeps things fresh. So hats off to Smight on this one. I kind of like the play that he's making there.
I'm not terribly sure it's gonna benefit him really in any real material way, but it was at least entertaining. And you know, there's a lot to be said for that. Once again, we have that enemy down in Thieves Town giving JTB a hard time, but he just nips it in the bud, freezes him with the hook shot, and takes care of business. So no more threat there, as he as well is kind of low on hearts deep into Thieves Town here. Going to be an interesting blind fight for JTB.
Cookiepocalypse checking out the dam after visiting the Cave of Mediocrity, so he too will be looking to finish off Argus in that dungeon.
And Gus going into Hera. Looks like he's got his hammer. Now so he must have mirrored out in not wanting to do the tile room, but now going to make that play.
Yeah, Gus was one of the early runners that took off out of Hera when I believe he saw that it was going to be a tile room play.
And now able to take a break comfortably, as he's got those iframes going and the tiles can't hurt him. Cookie into Swamp. Smight going to go check out the dig game. Are you surprised so far, Profe, that nobody has considered making a play into Pod? I know it's the green pendant, but they have the hammer, they have the bow.
Pod has proven time and again that that it could certainly have the bow in the early chests. It could have a progression item, and a lot of people opting out of going into Pod early on without the bow and the hammer. But everyone has that, so I am a little bit surprised that play hasn't been made yet.
Gus lighting the torches, picking up his big cube. We've got a death from JTB. I believe it was in Thieves Town, yeah. I didn't see if that happened on the blind fight. But he's going to nope right out of there and move on with his exploration of the overworld, it seems.
I don't blame him. I'm a runner who, when blind becomes a bit overwhelming and unbeatable for me, I just take off out of Thieves Town as well. So I don't blame this move on JTB.
So Cookie is going through Swamp. He's our second player to do that, Gus being the first. And we'll have to take a closer look this time, or at least I will, at what was inside. It doesn't seem like Gus got anything of significance.
However, Smight did just find half magic in the pyramid, which that is going to be a crucial factor into some time saving and success, I'm sure, for him moving forward on this run.
Oh yeah, it's always nice in the Gauntlet, or even other dungeons for sure, but especially like in the Gauntlet, just to have that assurance of having enough magic to get through and being able to spam the Fire Rod if you happen to pick it up. And the Fire Rod will be required, of course, because Skull Woods is a crystal. So that's somewhere out there for them to find. Smight checking out North Hyrule. Gonna go see Catfish. And Gus expertly taking down Moldor.
That was a nice, clean Moldorm fight by Gus, and unfortunately only rewarded with 20 rupees on that one, but also a crystal for his troubles.
So now all the players have completed Tower of Hera. I believe they've all cleared Eastern as well. And now we're getting a little bit more divergence as things... there are a lot of possibilities for the players, and it's not quite clear where they should go, so they're just kind of taking their best guess.
It does actually seem that Cookiepocalypse is one that didn't clear Eastern yet, but what did Catfish look like? He had just a piece of love, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just a piece of heart of Catfish, so not the game breaker that Smight was looking for. Getting our single green rupee from Stumpy.
Looks like Smite's going to check out the graveyard.
And Gus throwing on that Burna. Checking out Spike Cave. Just a red rupee.
We're about to see what's in the King's Tomb here by Smight. Hopefully something equally exciting. But again, a lot of these runners sticking to the overworld past a few dungeons here.
So rupees in King's Tomb and 50 rupees in the Grove Cave. Picked up by JTB.
And at this point, it looks like Smite's also going to do the Northern Ledger and the Graveyard, which isn't a bad move. When you're there, it's a very intelligent play to make.
Yeah, go ahead and clear it out. They've already done Bonk Rocks, I believe. Clearing out this, taking care of King's Tomb, and just forget about it. Now, I have a question. Did we ever find out what was in that one chest in the back of Escape?
I believe it was a piece of heart, if I remember seeing the chat earlier and see them mark that correctly.
Okay, I imagine the players have taken care of it already. They've all got the lantern. I just never quite saw it, I don't think. But I imagine they've taken care of that. As Cookie is making his way deeper into Swamp Palace. Still no sword upgrade. It's notable to point out for all of our players still dealing with just the fighter sword. And Cookie looking for health anywhere he could find it. Not finding any there.
Yeah, Flaffykin's aptly pointing out one of our two wonderful trackers that it was a piece of heart in that location, and so the runners have all looked like they're taking care of a lot of things as we have our first pod play by Smight.
So Smight the first to take a dip into pod. We've got our second trip, if I'm not mistaken, in the Skull Woods, this time by Gus. It was JTB who was in and out pretty quickly last time before making his way to Thieves Town. And so far, nothing significant. If I recall correctly, that big key leads to just the map, and that stops their ability to get further in the dungeon.
This is one of the few times I've seen Skullwoods really not reap any benefit for our runners happening this early. V26 usually favors something exciting in Skullwoods, but has yet to be seen.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Of course, there's still a little bit left in the dungeon. They just can't access it right now, not having the fire rod. So we'll see. Skullwoods, as you said, seems to have always got some value in it these days. But we'll just have to hold off on that for the time being, it seems.
Looks like Smite's going into is really exploring pod, and hopefully something exciting. And at this point, with the locations dwindling, I would imagine something exciting is about to happen here in pod.
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of chests in pod, and true, many of them are small keys, but still a lot of opportunity here. And with the boots in the mirror make the dungeon a little bit quicker, I should say.
The boots and the mirror. I've seen people do bootsless, mirrorless runs in pod, and it's pretty frustrating, I would imagine.
Just a small key there in Skull Woods, so Gus not finding what he was looking for there. Gonna fill up on magic before he mirrors away. Cookie on the Argus fight. JTB also in Swamp.
Smight did find that boss key in pod as he continues his way through the dungeon.
Now heading into the bow-locked section of pod. But of course, having the bow, we'll be able to get through it, no problem. This dungeon is entirely clearable. It is the green pendant and a death from Gus. Seemed like I think he was in the Village of Outcasts.
No, I actually think Gus was about to check the Bonk Cave up there to see
Bumper Cave.
What was there. Bumper Cave, there we go, thank you.
Was it a murder dactyl that got him? I hear they can do a lot of damage.
Let me tell you, those murder dactyls are brutal agents of evil, so it looks like it might have been one of them.
Meanwhile, Cookie having to control the distance here, keeping Argus on the outside down to a half heart. No blue potion to spare, as we saw in his menu there. Missing an arrow shot. This is going to be very tense for Cookie.
Like Austin Powers, Cookiepocalypse lives dangerously, and points to anyone who gets that reference in chat.
And points to Cookie for finishing up Argus, not a boss that you want to have to backtrack to. So he did well there, picking up crystal number 2.
And so far, nothing terribly exciting happening in Pod. It looks like we got some bombs and a heart piece for Smight, as he, I believe, is going to head down to the basement to pick up the 2 items there.
So now for Cookie, I imagine having mirrored out of Eastern, not having the lantern, not wanting to deal with the dark room, might be heading back up there to knock it out and maybe take a look into Pod, as Smight is doing right now.
Yeah, a lot of people will do Pod and then will mirror back to Light World for Eastern. So, you know, that could be also a play that Cookiepocalypse is looking to make.
Smight navigating his way to the maze, finding a map. Got another chest coming up here, and then the big chest. Only finding bombs. Granted, I haven't seen everything in Pod, but there's the powder. That's a nice pickup. That'll open up at least one location and add to the growing list of safety items that they've got. That with the net should make them feel pretty comfortable if other players were to find it. Right now, it's just Smight.
Yeah, the powder is one of those safety items that you really like to have, especially in the late hour.
So Cookie now descending into Pod. And I suspect going to also pick up that powder here in just a little bit. Again, Pod, not a crystal dungeon, but it's the green pendant. And it looks like Smite's
in time, finishing up the dungeon.
Another trip over to the King's Tomb. This time it's Gus, who's at the mirror ledge. Yeah, the King's Tomb. Just picking up the rupees, though. Nothing terribly significant in Swamp that we've seen now, I think the 3rd time through.
It looks like we have 2 runners in Pod, and we have JTB finishing up Swamp Palace, and Gus was just cleaning up the graveyard there.
Smight closing in on Helmasaur. Cookie maybe nearing about the halfway point of Pod. And with the magic powder, still no Titan's mitts, and I think at this point that's starting to limit the players a little bit. There's a whole collection of items that they'd like to be able to check out in Village of Outcasts that they can't get to. So that could be the next big item for these players to find. We've got our 3rd Argus fight. This time being performed by JTB.
And Smight going into Helmasaur to take care of him with the sword hammer strats that I see almost every single runner pull off these days.
Yeah, extending the hitbox to that hammer makes it a lot easier. He's got silver arrows, gonna fire one if he can. Helmasaur got moving a little bit too quickly, but there he gets one and finishes him off with 1 heart to spare. So Smight gonna pick up that green pendant. I imagine, why not turn it in right away to Sahasrahla? He was there. Make it worth your while, especially since he was just getting the compass off of Helmasaur. There's the riot shield for Gus mentioned in Swamp. I believe Gus picked up the other shield. So now he's got the riot shield, as does Cookie.
And JTB very close to finishing up his fight with Argus as he very fastly moves through that item select screen to take care of that boss.
Yeah, gonna go with the arrow strats here. Not a bad call since you have silvers, but that is a moving target. We saw Smight doing the target practice game south of Village of Outcasts. This is probably a bigger challenge. And JTB nails him dead in the center there, finishes the fight off to pick up his riot shield.
And Sahasrahla, yeah, only 50 rupees, unfortunately, so just a little bit from his savings account for Smight, so he looks like he's heading back to Kakariko Village.
So the pod play not really paying off unless powder leads to a big progression item. And the chances of that aren't great, but obviously worth checking. And even if it doesn't, powder is not a bad thing to have in your back pocket, as we talked about a bit ago.
It looks like the runners are sort of running out of things to check at this point, and Smite's heading back into the Dark World.
Yeah, no book, so we can't check the pedestal. It'd be interesting to see what might be on it. Of course, with Misery
Now, if I'm not
Mire
mistaken,
as a crystal, it could be Flute. Go ahead.
did we have anyone check King Zora? I know that was asked in the chat earlier, and honestly, at this point, I've forgotten.
I think we did. I think we had one player check it. I just remember, for whatever reason, seeing the big whirlpool forming, and I don't recall it being anything significant. I would put my certainty there at about 95%. So it's maybe a little too certain considering I don't actually remember who it was, but I think we saw it.
With 4 sets of eyes, I'm gonna assume that you are probably right. And Smight looks like he's going into Skull Woods. Interesting that no one has played on the Fetch Quest Bat item yet of the powder, so I'd be interested to see who the first runners to do that.
Yeah, Smight, the first one who was able to do that, but electing instead to go into Skull, not going into the Village of Outcasts. And now we've got our third pod play from this time from JTB.
One of our incredible trackers in the name of DT saying that the bat really is, if we look at all 4 runners, the only available option for an item that we've yet to see at this point.
Yeah, it seems like it could be the case. I'm racking my brain here trying to think, but they can't get into Ice Palace. They can't even get around Misery Mire without the Flute. We don't know what T-Rock is in terms of medallion, I don't think. Of course, they don't have the Fire Rod, so they couldn't fight Trinex, but being that it's a pendant, that's not terribly important, but I'm wondering how cruel would that be to have to make an early T-Rock play out of desperation?
And not only that, but I don't believe we had any of the runners check the pendant required for Turtle Rock, so it may not even be accessible at this point.
Right, the only pendant we have is the Ether Pendant, which I think was one of the first 2 items we picked up. If I'm not mistaken, it came out of Sanctuary, and the mirror came out of Link's house. So we got off to a pretty hot start here, but things have really come to a grinding halt as the players are probably getting a little frustrated and stressed out. Got another blind fight.
Chat saying that one of the cruelest things would be powder from mushroom and increasing that fetch quest longevity. So, would it make good for the viewers? Perhaps, but for the runners, it would be very frustrating, I'd imagine.
Especially without the Flute. I mean, getting the mushroom when you've got Flute is really no big deal. But having to track over there without the Flute can be a pain for sure. So we got simultaneous boss kills. Blind for Gus. And I believe the Armos Knights, no, Helmosaur for Cookie.
So almost all of our runners have 3 crystals at this point, and it is frustrating when you have a bit of a cadence going with your run, and you hit a screeching halt because of one progression item. Especially an hour into the game, I can imagine that these runners are a little bit frazzled.
Seeing another dig game, which I don't recall the particular item, but it was not a progression item, I can tell you that. We've seen it a couple times. And Cookie gonna make the play to Zora, so we will get confirmation on whatever that was.
Only 20 rupees on that dig game, so another disappointment for Gus is, I'm sure, the level of soul searching and brain searching is increasing for all 4 of these runners as they continue to hit dead ends.
And JTB is the first to make use of that buck net, capturing a fairy in pod. King Zora emerging from the depths there of the waterfall and gifting Cookie with 10 arrows. So, 10 arrows for 500 rupees. Not the greatest deal that I've ever seen. But Cookie going to take this time to pick up the Ice Rod just because, why not? There is the off chance that maybe Trinex is holding a progression item. Just a 5
And Gus checking... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying just a 5-second trip to pick it up, so no big deal.
One of the things that I missed earlier was to see what was on Stumpy, and it only looks like a paltry 1 rupee for Gus, and he looks like he's going to go north. I'm not 100% certain if he had checked that pyramid yet, and actually I would say with 100% certainty now because he does not have half magic, but it looks like he's going into pod instead.
Yeah, interesting that you point out half magic, as that has only been discovered by Smight and JTB in their race. Cookie and Gus have not made that trip to the pyramid yet. I'm sure, especially if we don't find a progression item immediately somehow, that's going to be a trip that they'll take. A death from JTB, but he's got the ferry, so a timely scoop.
And Smight is wrapping up the latter half of Thieves Town. I got to imagine after this play and hopefully successful battle against Blind that he's going to head for that bat powder.
Checking out the big chest in Thieves Town, only getting the bombs, and the frustration is mounting. But, you know, if anything, he's in good company, because really all the runners at this time have more or less checked most of the same locations, albeit in different orders, and yet they're kind of stuck at the exact same point. So whenever we do see it, we're going to see it now. It looks like Cookie going to be the first one to take a trip to the bat. And I think we all know that it's got to be something. So get your guesses in chat as to what Cookie is going to discover right here.
What do you think it's going to be, Dude Duberson?
I'm hoping for a book, actually. I think a book would be fun. Lead us into Desert Palace.
I'm going for Mitts on this one.
And it's the book! Yes! Well, Mitts is a good guess, too. I would have liked to have seen that. That might have been nice, but the book, it's a bit sadistic, I guess. It kind of forces them to go and just check out one location, but I guess that actually takes a lot of the guessing out of the equation for them, maybe makes it a bit easier in some way.
The game making a play for literacy versus strength and coming out positively in favor of literacy.
Oh, that was excellently put. Yeah, so we got some book learning to do here. Cookie, gonna put that off for a while, though, it appears, and take a trip into the Dark World. Not sure what he intends to check here, as we know that he's already cleared Thieves Town.
Did he go ahead and check Pedestal? I'd missed that.
Oh, that might be immediately what he's doing. Good observation. I think unless he's going to take a trip to Skull, that's what we're going to see.
Could be a double whammy. He could be taking a trip to Skull, see what he can find, and then checking that pedestal, which, let me tell you, I think there's probably still a chance that something important is on that pedestal.
Yeah, it could be. Go ahead and thinking here about what could be on the pedestal. Anytime Thieves is a pendant, you know, it's not good if you're wanting to avoid a pedestal seed because it's such a free dungeon. Could be the flute. Can't be the fire rod. But it could be something... I know we had somebody go up and try to check, I believe it was JTB going up to try to check the cape, the magic cape ledge up in North Dark Hyrule. Don't know if cape is required. I feel like somebody else might have checked that. Either way, we know that this detour into Skull Woods is really just, at this moment, not going to bear any fruit for Cookie, but slowly but surely winding around toward the pedestal, so eventually we're going to get it, and until then the hype will just continue to grow.
Yeah, Pedestal Dream can be continued to be held by our observers in chat until we do get that successful check.
Kane, I believe, Kane of Samaria could be on the pedestal. Note, take that back. Turtle Rock is the pendant. Beg your pardon. I'm sure there's some corrections incoming in chat.
Chat is pretty quiet. I think we're all kind of scratching our heads at this point as to where to go next and what to check.
So now Smight making the play in the Swamp Palace, as we see there. He is the last one to do that. But not really anything exceptional coming out of it, so he didn't miss out on a lot.
And Cookie opting not to check the pedestal, much to the chagrin of many viewers in our trackers in the chat.
Yeah, that is interesting. Now, I thought I saw him when I looked at the screen a little bit ago. He was defeating the Armless Knights, and then when I looked back later, he was coming out of pod, but it doesn't look like he's got the powder, as we see Gus picking that up right there. And their trackers have not indicated that he's beaten Helmasaur, so I don't know why he wouldn't check it, but if he hasn't finished pod, then perhaps that's part of why he didn't want to check it. I'm not sure. It seemed like a check was definitely in order there. Cookie just toying with our hearts there.
It's just keeping up the mystique, as it were.
Just allowing the hype to build into a immutable crescendo. Just louder, with more enthusiasm.
I like the term immutable crescendo. I think that that should be the quote from the seed today.
I don't know. Choosing literacy over strength is pretty nice. I had not heard that. I thought that was on point. I liked it. As Cookie is electing to do what? I'm not sure. Doesn't have a sword upgrade. Can't check the tab. Oh, he's going to go in the desert, of course. The book. How quickly
desert would be the
forget.
next logical play.
Yeah, I think so. So we will get our first trip into desert, which, I mean, we knew within the first minute of the game that it was a crystal, and yet here we are an hour and 6 minutes in, and just now taking your trip to desert.
Desert's not a bad dungeon to have in the latter half of the game, although I wouldn't necessarily call us in the latter half yet, but it is a quick clear once you have all the necessary items. And looks like JTB has successfully checked that bumper cave legend, and there's only 10 arrows, so it's not necessarily a bad thing that our last runner took a death on the way to that cave.
So not a lot of items in desert. I think only 3 unique items, if I'm not mistaken, and one of them can be locked on the torch here, but of course they have boots, so it's accessible, and it's just the compass, so Cookie will move on rather quickly. JTB checking out the remainder of the graveyard area there, as Gus moves on to his Helmasaur fight. This would be his second pendant that he's picked up, leaving only T-Rock out of the equation.
Yeah, at this point, it's hard to tell which of the in both of these groups, Y and D, who is in the clear lead, because all these runners seem to be paralleling each other and checking what the other hasn't, and eventually arriving at a similar conclusion. So it's hard to see if anyone has an insurmountable lead or even a calculable lead at this point.
So the big key picked up for Cookie. He's going to go check that big chest. And I think that the determining factor right now, even if there's maybe 1 or 2 locations that have been checked that another runner has not checked, is we'll see Gus right away. We'll have our attention turned toward how quickly he decides to go check that magic bat and get the book. So I think Landmolus has an item is what that means. We've got the map and the compass, and no more chests to open at desert.
Yeah, it looks like only the, I heard someone called the title deed to the dungeon last night was picked up out of the big key chest there, and so it looks like Cookiepocalypse is going to make the run for Landmolus at this point.
And I think down here on the desert ledge is just 300 rupees, and so he'll pass on that, having already taken a trip to Zora.
Interesting play. It's nice to have rupees, especially in the later game when you need to buy potions going in against tower, fighting against Ganon, even if Turtle Rock is one of those dungeons here that's required. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cookiepocalypse post his defeat of Landmolus does go pick that 300 rupees up.
And so in our bottom race between JTB and Smight, JTB grabbing that book, and I think at that moment, starts to build a bit of a lead over Smight. At this point, yes, grabbing that book as Smight is working his way through Swamp Palace does
put JTB in a bit of a lead here. But of course, as we've seen, even down to the final seconds of a race, anything can happen.
Smight, however, pretty close to finishing off Argus, has the powder, just has not made that trip to the bat. You think that might be the very next thing on his agenda. So whatever lead JTB might have in that respect in terms of just pure progression might be narrowing here pretty soon. As a Land Molus fight is underway, Silver Arrow strats for Cookie. He's got 1 down. No, he's got 2 down. I take that back. Only 2.5 hearts though, but 1 well-placed arrow finishes it off, and we'll see what he gets. The gloves, the mitts.
There it is. There's our progression. We have the mitts coming out of Lenmol's fight, which Cookiepocalypse has got to be very excited about.
Yeah, the mitts is obviously going to allow him to get into Ice Palace whenever he desires. It's going to open up a couple of item locations in the Village of Outcast. It's going to make getting into the Dark World a little bit easier in a couple of spots. As Gus picks up his book, so now the only runner in this, I guess these 2 different races, but the only one we're watching who has not picked it up is Smight, who, again, finishing off Argus here, might be the very next thing that he does. His opponent, JTB, winding his way through desert, and will eventually be rewarded for his troubles with the Titan's mitts, and wasting no time, Cookie heading up the Death Mountain, going to go into the Dark World there, and I believe there are 8 chests available to him in the Dark World here, and then of course a Hookshot Cave.
There's a lot of promise for Cookiepocalypse here, and without Bombos and without the Fire Rod, you have to imagine what's going through his head right now is T-Rock. Well, without Kane, of course, T-Rock's on to play it. So right now, again, mitts are great. However, it offers promise up to a point, up to a precipice, and then we have to sort of sit back and think once more where to go.
Yeah, so looking at what we've got, I wonder if Cookie is going to go ahead and give us a peek at least at what is required to get into T-Rock. Of course, they can't really do much more than open the dungeon without the Cane of Samaria. Sword upgrade there for Cookie on Death Mountain, so already utilizing this lead that he's got over Gus, who is not too far behind in Desert, soon to pick up his mitts.
And Chad trying to give some energy over to Smight, who looked for a minute like he was pondering what the next move was. He may have forgotten he has powder. A couple have been theorizing in the chat.
And so it is Ether to get into T-Rock. So here in Hookshot Cave, if we find Samaria and Fire Rod, you wonder if he'll go straight into T-Rock. I'm not sure. He's got some other options now with the mitts, but so far nothing great in Hookshot Cave. Some rupees. 1 more chest. The flute. So now you can get access to Misery Mire.
I have to imagine that's going to be the next play for Cookiepocalypse's Misery Mire because, as the options dwindle and you have an item that clearly points you in that direction, even if you can't finish it, although I have seen the Cane in Misery Mire before, that's probably his next move.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to think. I think it was Smight that we saw check Catfish, and it was just a piece of heart. But I'm not sure if we've seen that check from other players. It looks for a moment like maybe that was on Cookie's mind, as he's going to go check out the Dark World in Village of Outcast, I believe, instead of going straight to Mire.
Cookie looks like he's about to activate the Swag Duck Flute, which we are honored to have I believe the OG of the Swag Duck Anthem tracking, one of our 2 fantastic trackers today.
Yeah, in the name of DT, tracking for us, doing an excellent job with that. Unfortunately, not going to get a chance to serenade us with that classic song. And I wouldn't deign to do an impression of it. That wouldn't be good. But yeah, the flute is activated for Cookie. So I forgot, I missed a step there. Of course, he has to activate the flute before he can actually get down to Mire. So it was, in fact, his next play. And we're going to get at least a check into the shed. Probably checkerboard cave, so 3 items there that at this moment only he has access to, but JTB, having received his mitts, maybe making a play up onto the Death Mountain here. Gonna have to go the long way around if he does do that, though. Fire Rod.
And we find the Fire Rod.
Yeah, that is a big pickup. of course, because now Skull Woods can be not just completed, but you can clear out the rest of it. And that might be... I suppose we could still have... Did we check the item that's required to get into Mire? I didn't see.
You know, I missed that. It looks like Cookiepocalypse isn't going to go back and check either. But it looks like Smight is continuing sort of a comb, a sweep, if you will, of the overworld. And kind of thinking for a moment, what is his next move? And he does not have the book, so that sort of locks him where he is right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It just seems at this time that he has just forgotten to use that powder on the bat, which is, you know, a little bit interesting. Don't want to critique the runner at all because there's so many things, you know, going through your mind, so many possibilities that you're trying to calculate on the fly. But, you know, when I saw the powder, the first thing that occurred to me was, well, that gives me one other location. And when you're as hard pressed for places to check as the runners, you know, you thought, and the Cane of Samaria at the Lumberjacks, as I interrupt myself to get back on track. Huge pickup there for JTB.
It's got to be Kane. I won't even try to imitate the voice, but looks like we have another progression item. So interestingly enough, JTB has one progression item that's crucial, and Cookiepocalypse has another. So it is interesting to see the parallel tracks of these two runners, or soon to be perpendicular, I'm sure, if I may make a math pun.
You may. I'll allow that. Couldn't take the chest inside with him. Gonna have to leave it behind just to check the red rupees, so nothing too beneficial there at the Hammer Pigs. Gonna take the chest on a long walk. Gonna save first, probably to Link's house and walk down to the swamp. But yeah, that cane is immediately nice to find, but not useful quite yet if he wants to get into Mire, of course, because he is yet to go up to Eastern Death Mountain to find the flute in Hookshot Cave.
Looks like JTB is taking back, as has been lovingly referred to many times, the lunchbox, and which is the locked chest in Dark World, Kakariko Village, right near the the Dwarven Smith's house. So it'll be interesting to see what is to be had from that chest.
Yeah, I've also heard it called Gary's chest because I don't know whether it's official, but that thief hiding away there near the desert entrance is affectionately called Gary. We got a Mothula fight down to 1 heart. Red potion consumed just in the nick of the time for Cookiepocalypse, so now we should finish off Moth, no problem. Going as sword slashes in the Master Sword. He's run low on magic. No hammer strats. That's a really difficult proposition, though, with the really unpredictable and unusual hitbox of the hammer. Finishes off Moth. And Gus, his opponent, not too far behind, making the right check here of Hookshot Cave. Gonna find the flute, which is required to get into Misery Mire. And at the same time, we see JTB also making that East Death Mountain play. Also, importantly, they pick up a Master Sword here in a moment, and that will allow them access to the 2 tablets as well, in case there's an item to be had there. Although now, with knowing the location of Samaria, but not quite knowing the pendant required to get into Mire, we're very nearly in go mode here.
Poor Smight, the chat is really rallying for him to make that realization that he does have the powder to move on in his quest to save Princess Zelda, but Smight just continuing to check the overworld. And I've been in this location, I've been in this position rather, where you have a progression item to move forward and you sort of put it on the back burner, and it's frustrating because you start to double check places you've already gone.
Yeah, it is a tough position to be in, and you know, a tough one to watch as well, because you know, Smight early in the game, a very talented runner, clearly making a lot of good decisions, but it's just simply, you know, slipped his mind, and so it's certainly unfortunate as you see him going back and forth. I mean, you can almost visualize the frustration that he must be wearing on his face right now, as his opponent JTB is pulling farther ahead, just a moment away from picking up the flute.
Looks like Cookiepocalypse is going to be the first runner of the 4 to make a play for Ice Palace, which is the next logical location, without that cane of Samaria. So you wonder at this point, JTB probably with getting the flute is going to make the play on Misery Mire.
And JTB also checking T-Rock. Doesn't have the fire rod, but appears interested maybe in just opening up the dungeon. But he has Samaria. He's the only one who has the red cane right now, so he can do more than just open it up. He can actually explore the dungeon. But at this point, it seems like the only really useful item that we know he can find in there might be a pendant, if it's in fact a pendant needed to get into Mire.
Due to the fact that I have some short-term amnesia of where the fire rod is, do you remember where that was?
It was in Mire Shed. So the fire rod is in the Mire area, but it's not been checked yet by JTB. I think that Cane of Samaria is encouraging him to go into T-Rock. And JTB I don't think ever checked the pedestal, so there might be a part of him that thinks, although of course the fire rod can't be at the pedestal because you need it to defeat Trinex. But maybe he just wants to knock it out, or more likely he just thinks that it might be in here and he wants to explore the dungeon.
Smight, the light bulb goes on for Smight, and he heads for his progression item in the Batcave, which is going to make him, I'm sure, equal parts frustrated and excited at the same time.
And that could be, this is obviously good news for him, but JTB rolling the dice a bit here. He doesn't know that the way we do because we know the location of Fire Rod, but the only really useful thing he could find in here is a medallion. And knowing that he does not have Fire Rod there, he can't light those torches. It just occurred to me as well. So his progress is halted in Turtle Rock, which is probably a good thing for him, as it seems like really the play he needs to make is for Misery Mire. But he may go check the Ether Tablet first.
I would say it's a boon for JTB that he didn't have the fire rod, so that he really couldn't progress much further into T-Rock, because that too could be a pit of disappointment.
So this will be a fun check. What do we have on the Ether Tablet? We've only had the book for about 15 minutes. And a red push, and not a progression item, obviously, but it's useful. It's nice to have.
It's good to have those potions, especially later on with only 2 swords at this point. If we do go into Master Sword Ganon, from experience, I can tell you that it's pretty helpful to have those potions handy.
And so Smight, having exhausted pretty much every other option after getting the book, making the correct play, going into Desert, should be collecting his mitts here in due time. And then, after that, he's got some catching up to do. But we see JTB not checking the correct location right now, as far as we know. So Smight maybe with a chance here to, cut into this lead just a little bit, as Gus is going to go ahead and finish off Mothula, hopefully. Doesn't have the half magic, and neither did Cookie when he went up against Moth, so that could make things a little bit more difficult. Does have a Master Sword and a hammer.
I'd say one of the advantages this might have, if I can put a bit of a silver lining on the cloud here, is that he did check a lot of overworld. So if it comes down to an item trolling the runners, it could be that he has that advantage, that he's already gone to many of those locations.
The problem being, though, that when he does pick up the Titan mitts, that just opens up, probably a dozen more locations that he can immediately access. Now, a lot of those locations are lumped in together, so it's not like you have to go across the map to 12 different spots, but he will have another decision in front of him in terms of where do I go next. And I think the ideal play would be for him to go immediately up to East Death Mountain to get the flute, and then to use that to get down to Mire Shed and get the Fire Rod, or to get the Lumberjacks and the Cane of Samaria.
Agreed, and I think that's a great routing decision. Coming from you, Dude Duverson, is Cookiepocalypse. I just saw picked up the cape, which is a great safety item to have, especially as we move ever so closer to Ganon and his battle.
Right, and without having a mail upgrade so far, which is pretty shocking. And as soon as I say that, I was wondering if that would happen. As soon as I say that, Cookie gets the blue mail. So that, I was going to say those safeties are really, really important when you only have the green mail, but he's got a little more insurance there as he continues to make his way through Ice Palace. And we'll get a pendant check on, and it's Ether at Misery Mire, so we're in go mode. And the only player truly in Go mode is JTB, and he's going into Mire right now, so that is not good for Smight.
Yeah, we are in Go mode. That is an exciting discovery to make for any runner, to see when the pendant, they are the droids that they're looking for, the pendants they were looking for, they had all along.
So that puts Smight in a bit of a bind, and hopefully he can make the correct plays to not let the lead get too far away. But that makes the most interesting race here that we're watching, the one on top, Cookie and Gus, who both have the Fire Rod, but have yet to go do Lumberjacks to get that Cane of Samaria. And I'm not sure either of them, I didn't see either of them at least, check to see what medallion they need as far as Misery Mire goes. So they may not know that they're just a cane away from Go mode, but they also may know. There's a lot of knowns and a couple unknowns on my end.
It is always quite taxing to see 4 runs at the same time, and so it sometimes is forgettable who checked what, but it looks like you are right. In the top run, it looks like the runners are taking a more parallel approach to their advancement. In the bottom run, Smight, I would imagine at this point Smite's got to believe he's a little bit behind, but his execution is historically pretty good, so hopefully he can cut into that lead a bit.
All right, we'll see where he goes next, as it's going to be very important for him trying to stay in the race.
Now, at some point, JTB picked up the mushroom. I believe, if Jack can help out here, I believe it was in Misery Mire.
A timely use of that powder to get his health back up. Checking the remainder of Mire here, getting another key. As we see Smight heading into the village of Outcasts. Now this is good if he immediately goes to do Lumberjacks, at least get his Cane of Samaria, but after that he's really got to get up to East Death Mountain and get that flute, which should lead him to Mire, to the Fire Rod. That all falls into place pretty well, but it's just a matter of how quickly will he decide to go up to East Death Mountain, and will he, he'll likely check the Hammer Pigs, maybe do Purple Chest, so that could take a little time for him to get on the right path as we know it.
When you first get the Titan Mitts, it's not an unbelievable play that you're going to clean up the rest of Dark World Kakariko Village, but you're right, in going up to Death Mountain, that would have been the game changer for Smight, at least. Maybe not a game changer for the match, but it would get him ever closer to cutting into that lead.
So Cookie is going to go straight to Cold Stare. I'm assuming that it could be the case that he's not found the map or the compass so far, which would leave just that big chest and Cold Stare to have those 2 items.
We did get a sword upgrade for both runners, Group Y. We had the Tempered or Carrot Sword, as some people will refer to it as, in the dungeon here.
Well, that'll be very useful. They do have silvers, so, Master Sword isn't quite as scary when you've got silver arrows for Ganon, but that gauntlet is a lot easier when you've got at least the Tempered Sword.
Agreed, and for people who are not as well traveled with Master Sword Ganon, taking some solace in the fact that they now have an upgraded sword, I can tell you that Master Sword Ganon was a pretty scary prospect for me, so I would have been in either of these folks' shoes a lot happier to find that sword upgrade.
Yeah, you wonder. I mean, I feel like they may have been a little more excited to find Samaria in Ice Palace, but I bet when they find Tempered Sword, they were, they breathe a sigh of relief and say, well, that's pretty good. I'll take that. So JTB, again, the only runner in Go mode right now, got that Cane of Samaria from the Lumberjacks, and Smight has done that as well, but he's yet to get the Fire Rod from the Mire Shed outside of Misery Mire, the dungeon that JTB is currently in. And JTB is nearing the end of it.
Likely it'll be a quick fight with Vitreous, especially with those silvers. Those make the fight very quick and easy and clean. So we're going to see a Misery Mire finish by JTB, and a Misery Mire entrance by Cookiepocalypse, who is, I'm sure, very excited to see that he had the pendant he needed to get in.
Yeah, you see JTB just plucking away at those little vitrii, I guess you could call them, the little eyeballs, and finishing off Vitreous with no problem. However, the problem for Cookie here is, as you said, making his way into Mire, is that he's hoping to find Samaria in here, but he won't be able to, which will not allow him to progress past a certain point. So he's going to have to double dip. He's going to have to leave Mire here in a little while after he's exhausted all the chests here in the front half. So it will be really interesting to see what Gus does after he completes Ice Palace.
Looks like Smight was about to check the tablet over at Desert Palace, but instead opting to save and quit and go up to Death Mountain, which he's going to find out, as we have found out, that is the right move to make.
Yeah, he'll get his sword upgrade. So, and in fact, it's probably a good thing that he hadn't had the sword upgrade yet, just because that would have allowed it to check Bombos, the tablet. But realizing that he needs a sword upgrade, he'll actually get that up here in just a moment. And then after that, in Hookshot Cave, he'll be able to pick up that flute.
As our runners progress here, I just want to take another moment to thank Alvi, who is our restreamer, and our trackers in the name of DT and Flaffikins, who are pulling off one of the most Herculean tasks in these early rounds of the tournament, and restreaming and tracking 4 concurrent races. So give them a follow if you get a chance. I would say when you get the chance, not if. And if you like the job that we are doing as commentators, please give us a follow, and our runners as well.
Well said, and thank you. Yeah, I think the one person I hadn't gone out of my way to thank yet is Alvi. So yeah, restreaming is a very important and under-recognized job at times, so we certainly appreciate that and hope you do too as viewers. As Smight, going to go ahead and open T. Rocky's got the Cane of Samaria. Now, we saw JTB make this mistake a little while ago, but not having that Fire Rod is going to limit his progress a little bit if he decides to go inside, and now he's just going to open it up and hopefully proceed on over to Hookshot Cave.
Yeah, that was a good move by Smight, just opening up and perhaps rethinking and saying, I don't have Fire Rod, so I'm not going to even give this one a shot.
Unfortunately for Smight, he missed the Super Bunny Cave, which had the Master Sword in it, it appears. So, at this point, knowing that there's a sword upgrade in Ice Palace, it's not utterly imperative for him to pick up that sword, but knowing how close it was to him, somebody who might be rooting for him, you wish that he had. Although it looks like he's making his way there right now, so all's well that ends well.
It looks like Cookiepocalypse is doing some fetch questing as goes in and only gets a piece of heart, which, again, not a bad thing to get. And it looks like it's the Sankar, too, which is an added bonus.
JTB is struggling a bit with this Ice Palace bomb jump. We'd seen him pull off a couple of bomb jumps earlier in the game, one in Hera and one in Skull Woods, and he got them both first tries, so this can be a pretty precise one.
Of course, I'd be remiss to not mention JTB did take care of Misery Myers, so that puts him in a good position as well, as he successfully gets the bomb jump and then falls, which is one of the most tragic things to see in this situation that he's in.
The good news is that he has plenty of bombs, and he gets it there, so it's a wash now. I was going to say that he also, I think, still has a health potion if he has to use it. But he's on past the bomb jump and making his way through Ice Palace in go mode, which should make it pretty quick. And then, after that, he's just got Skull Woods, and he'll be able to make his way up to Ganon's Tower on Death Mountain. As we see Smight unlocking the flute, and we'll see if he immediately heads down to Mire.
Looks like both runners in Group Y about to do a bit of a high five as they bring the breadsmith back to his domicile for what I remember to be quite a disappointing reward.
No, it's the reward they're looking for, I think. I think they're both going to go into go mode at the same time. Well, they would if Gus weren't first doing the hammer pigs, as at 133, a little bit under 134, Cookiepocalypse is in go mode, and only with one dungeon to complete. But Gus is going to be right behind him, as Smight has the Fire Rod, and he is now in go mode as well.
Thank you for that correction there. It definitely was not a disappointing reward. I had forgotten that the breadsmiths gave the Cane of Samaria item.
It's easy to make that mistake with the locations we've seen checked in this game, and of course just the number of times we've seen them checked. There's a lot going on. I couldn't hold it against you. The good news is that both these players are in go mode. They're both heading to the same spot, so it's going to be a very close race. They've got identical items, with the exception of the cape, it appears. Gus doesn't have that, but that shouldn't factor in too much.
I believe Cookiepocalypse did a clean out of Misery Meyer, so all that he is going to be looking for, if he doesn't have it already, is that big key.
Yeah, that's a good point. He did come into Meyer already and was turned away without the cane, so he could be going through this dungeon a lot faster than Gus. And we see Cold Stare being finished off. Smight is into Meyer. Now, Smight, of course, is behind by about a dungeon and a half, probably. But being in go mode, he should be able to do them pretty quickly. But it will come down to, a gamble paying off in Ganon's Tower, or a mistake in Ganon's Tower by JTB.
Yeah, we have 3 out of our 4 runners doing some high fives here in Misery Meyer as they walk through. Cookiepocalypse needing to activate that switch so we can get that chest in the northern room there.
And Gus, a little bit low on health, but with the powder, and there's plenty of anti-fairies inside of Meyer. I suspect he'll be okay. But as you said, picking up that big key, Cookiepocalypse is on his way, and it's going to be a little bit longer for Gus.
Cookiepocalypse, yes, heading toward Vitreous ever so consistently, of course, is going to likely have a very clean fight there with the silver arrows, although running low on magic, but we'll be picking up a magic drop in just a moment. Meanwhile, on the Group D race, JTB looks like he's going into Skullwoods now that he has the Fire Rod, able to complete that. And that is another option, of course, for Smight once he wraps up Vitreous and Misery Meyer.
And a timely fairy picked up for Gus, getting rid of that beeping that I know drives some people crazy. JTB making the way through Skull Woods. And it should be, comparatively to what it could have been earlier in the game, should be a pretty smooth Mothula fight. Got that half magic. Obviously got a tempered sword. And, I mean, if he so chooses, he's got some safeties to, make sure the job gets done the first time. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem for JTB. And after that, he'll be on his way up to Ganon's Tower.
And then, of course, once our runners start making their way up to Ganon's Tower, we can play everybody's favorite game, the home version, Guess Where the Key Is in Ganon's Tower. And shame on you to those of you who say, well, they have boots, so not shaming anybody, but I always enjoy watching the chat on bootsless runs and saying, oh, the key's on boots, so...
Hoping it's on the torch, right? Yeah, the sadists, they just want to see the suffering of our runners, which, I mean, to be fair, it makes for some entertaining races. But I think these guys maybe deserve a bit of a break, as they had a really rough 45-minute stretch there where they were not really able to find progression. As Cookie is through Vitreous, Smight finishing off his Vitreous now, and Gus, I'd say, about 2.5 minutes behind Cookie, who's actually going to be the first one making it up Death Mountain. JTB was on the way to Mothula before realizing that he'd forgotten a key, had to go back and get it. But now he's one room away from Moth, and it should be a pretty quick fight.
Smight finishing up Vitreous and Misery Meyer, and likely he will be heading to Skullwoods next, so not doing too poorly, although we have Ice Palace finished by Gus and Misery Meyer are only left for him, so definitely lead by Gus, definitely not a sure thing that he will necessarily win the race, because as we've seen before, anything can happen from here on to the top of Ganon's Tower.
And a bit of a closer fight than maybe I was expecting with JTB and Moth. He still had a fairy, so it shouldn't have been a problem. But able to get the job done, and about a little over a minute, I'd say, behind Cookie in terms of making his way up the mountain. Although, again, that doesn't matter too much as they're not actually racing each other. It's Cookie against Gus and Smight against JTB. Gus, on to the final phase of Vitreous. Job done. Crystal 7 collected. Ganon's Tower is coming up.
Looks like Cookiepocalypse is activating that Turtle Rock War Point, so while he is warping into the Dark World, let's go ahead and throw it to chat. Which chest or which location do you feel that this boss key, this big key is going to be in? Go ahead and throw your number guesses in the chat.
DT with a pretty good guess in chat, 85. Could be, it could be. I've never seen it be chest 85 before. Could be the case. There are, what, 22 locations? Is that including the tile room?
I believe tile room is 23, and of course you're right, DT saying 85, which I believe is Zelda's desk drawer, so I don't know that we'll find it there.
Yeah, the roll top desk of Zelda. I forgot about that. It's an easy location to forget about, often overlooked. So we're going to see Cookie go right side. We'll see if he collects a key, whether or not he chooses to stay on this path with the Cane of Samaria strats, and he does not, so he'll mirror out or perhaps just go up the stairs. And he's going to continue on the right side, but without a key.
Meanwhile, JTB is warping over.
And so a bit of a slip up there by Cookie is going to allow Gus to catch up at least a little bit, as Cookie didn't pick up a key and continued right side anyway, getting into the tile room and having to mirror out. So, not a huge time sink, but certainly something that Gus will take at this point, being down, not quite up to Ganon's Tower yet. So nothing on the torch, but he does have to pick up the key, so rip Bob. Bob, the anti-fairy sprite is, I don't know, glitched out when that happens.
Bob, we hardly knew ye. So we have JTB making the right side gamble, and we have Cookiepocalypse on Group Y being trolled by one of the Skull Kids there, and getting Bombos, of course, could be helpful and would have been helpful, I'm sure, if had for Ice Palace.
Yeah, Bombo still could see a little utility potentially. Not likely, though, with the Fire Rod. No half magic, though, for Cookie. So, it could be the case that he uses that to clear out a Room of the Gauntlet. Although I wouldn't expect that to happen. Nice boomerang strats. Proceeding down the left side. Coming up on the randomizer room here a little bit. A room of the game that doesn't really yield anything important, and really only seems to ever get accessed if you're looking for the big key in Randomizer.
Meanwhile, we have Smight bravely continuing on in Ice Palace and doing a great job at making his way to Cold Stare. Still no big key, though, in Ganon's Tower, as 3 out of the 4 runners are frantically searching for that last piece of the puzzle to ascend to the final 2 battles.
JTB, Smite's opponent, obviously with a pretty sizable lead here, almost insurmountable, but we've seen some crazy things in the tournament. Still no big key, but we are in the rando room on the top left. Cookie looking for it, finds it. I'm not sure what chest number that is, like 11 or 12. Finds red mail, a nice little additional perk. Gonna go ahead and make his way on up the tower.
This puts Cookiepocalypse in a great position. He has great safeties. He has the cape. He has red mail. Tempered sword, of course, I'm sure he would love for some Paladine butter to be included in that armament, but he is certainly going to make his way up Ganon's Tower as quickly as possible.
Yeah. His opponent, Gus, not too far behind, though. I mean, less than a minute, 30 seconds away from getting that key for himself, so still a lot of execution. Could make the difference here in the gauntlet, the final portion before the Wizard Aghanim. And low health for Cookie, although he's got powder. I think he's got a potion or a fairy. He's got some things at his disposal. So I don't think he'll be taking a death, but I also don't want to jinx the poor guy. JTB picking up his big key and his mail.
It is pretty key and pretty crucial to have that riot shield, as people lovingly call it in the community, especially when you are fighting the Igors in the earlier rooms of the ascent to the top of Ganon's tower.
And we're going to see Cookie take a trip over to pick up some fairies. JTB taking a death, but he's got a fairy.
Of course, any seconds lost for JTB is a gain for Smight as he races his way valiantly through Skullwoods to get that second key.
So Gus is maybe, I think, 2 rooms behind Cookie at this point. I could be mistaken, but hot on his trail. And it's a race we'll be watching intently.
Cookiepocalypse making quick work of these gauntlet rooms, which can be very cumbersome for any runner as they move their way to the top of Ganon's tower, but doing quite a nice job of it.
Yeah, these rooms where the tiles are iced over can be especially tricky, but using that fire rod well, boots are going to help him get through the door, and he's on to Landmolus 2, skipping over the potential fairy there. Missing with the silver arrow on the first try, and not getting any of the Landmolus on cycle 1. And the lag.
I would say there were probably some pretty high frustration there from Cookiepocalypse switching strats up to Fire Rod and Sword instead of the silver arrows.
Yeah, interestingly, neither Cookie or Gus went by the pyramid to pick up that half magic. I would say if Gus had picked it up, that would really make things even closer than they already are, but he's struggling a bit in this gauntlet room with the 2 Beamos. Has to use a safety.
Meanwhile, JTB is blazing through the gauntlet rooms, which is unfortunate news for Smight, but he is making his way up with his last crystal to the top of Death Mountain. So certainly making a heroic effort to trim down the lead that JTB has right now.
And we'll see a fall from Cookie. That'll take a little bit of time to rectify that, as Gus could use a nice Landmolus. Got it, first try.
That one cycle is going to be crucial for him, as that as much as the fall was for Cookiepocalypse to even the score just a little bit.
He's already got his lantern out. We'll have to put it back for a moment at least to get the Cane of Samaria.
Cookiepocalypse making his way to the through the final rooms until Trolldorm 2. Troll Harder, I believe, is the title given to that fight.
Troll more. And so we've got Gus and JTB, though they're not racing each other. Of course, they're playing the same seed, and they're synced up pretty well right here. I think that might have been an intentional fall by Gus. Either way, he's going to get the door unlocked to get through, no problem. And a fall to Trolldorm by Cookie. This race just keeps getting closer.
Trolldorm, of course, living aptly up to his name as Gus is thinning and filing away that lead. And if we see another fall here, it could even be getting it much closer.
Nice dash by Cookie to finish off Trolldorm. We'll see if he chooses to validate. Probably not. Well, he does, and he'll be rewarded with 5 arrows. And in fact, that's actually that was just an upgrade, I think. So it's not terribly significant. Had it been just a quiver of arrows, that would have been pretty big, because he's only got 10, which should be plenty for Ganon. Either way, having some trouble here in this final room with the mini Helmosaurs. But just getting through, making his way to Aghanim 2. Gus and JTB finishing off Moldorm. Smight is in Ganon's tower. He's got a key. He's going the right way as things are winding down. But Gus and Cookie are roughly 15 seconds apart. Nice hookshot strategy there by Gus. See how this Aghanim 2 fight goes. Gets one there.
Mini Helmasaur is giving Gus a little bit of trouble as he ascends his way up to the final Aghanim fight for the seed.
Ooh, and nothing there for Cookie. I believe he's got 3 right now. Oh, again, coming up empty-handed.
And Gus got the double, so let me tell you, this race gets ever closer between the two of these runners. It could come down to this Ganon fight. It likely will come down to this Ganon fight, and if anyone falls, and although I hate to even invoke the commentator's curse here, the pace of this race and the change of this race could happen any moment.
And Gus, with a smoother Aga 2 fight, has positioned himself right behind Cookie. JTB finishing up as well. And Gus is less than 10 seconds behind Cookie here. This is going to be a close race. Both fighters with silvers and tempered. We'll see how well they can do against Ganon. What's the most important thing here for Gus to catch up, do you think, Profe?
You know, the torch glitch could sometimes save seconds. Just the facile completion of these first few phases, and without taking much damage, that's really important. And of course, there's always that threat for a fall, and I've seen it ruin runs. It's ruined runs of mine, and I think that really the fall for me is the most ominous ominous thing hovering over this race.
And we see different strategies there. Having Ganon pinned up against the wall, Cookie went with the spin strats to get a couple extra hits in and avoid the recoil, and a fall!
Oh my god, a fall! I did it. It was the commentator's curse. Blame me for that one. And certainly you can tell Cookie in a post-game interview that was my fault.
Oh gosh, Cookie. All eyes are now on Gus's Ganon fight as he's into phase 3. Cookie taking a it's never a timely hit when Ganon knocks you off, gives you a hug. But that could be the decisive factor in this race.
You have to believe that at this point, Cookiepocalypse is thinking that that fall is gonna put him in some dire straits, and indeed it seems to be the case.
As Gus is now moving into the final portion of the fight. Looked like a single, not sure if he got 2 in there. And now he's going to relight the torch. This could be a double to finish it off. No, the fire bat came out at a very poor time. There it is. Gus!
GG to Gus.
And Cookie takes a death to Ganon, trying to make up for lost time. JTB simultaneously to Gus, more or less, finishing up his race. And your winners, Gus and JTB.
Finishing at roughly the same time, so GG to JTB from Group D. A lot of rhyming scheme there. And GG to Gus from Group Y.
Yeah, big wins for both of them. I mean, they came in with the worst record in their group stages. This is the third game for each of them. Gus picked up his first win, so staying alive in Group Y. Now with a record of 1-2, dropping Cookie to 1-2. And Smight, it appears, suffering his first defeat, now 2-1 in Group D. And JTB evening that record at 2-1. So big wins for both of our winners here, as Cookie, unfortunately, just trying to make things happen. Probably
gotta feel bad for Cookie when you're this far along in the race and you start hitting tilt a little bit, and and this would happen to any runner, skilled or beginner. It feels bad.
Yeah, nerves are a real thing in any competition, especially when it's a race like this, when you can't see your opponent. You're more or less racing against yourself, but you're looking at that chat for the dreaded .done, worrying that it's pending at all times, always feeling like you're behind probably. And unfortunately for Cookie, he was really in the lead. Now, he never had a commanding lead, but the fall to Trolldorm, fall to Ganon really did it there.
That .done, I gotta tell you, is a real blow to the self-esteem, especially when you're so close to finishing. And you know that Cookiepocalypse likely had the realization that his fall to Ganon was just sort of the first domino in his loss of lead there. So the .done, I'm sure, was just the icing on the cake of the diminishing self-efficacy of poor Cookiepocalypse.
Yeah, the icing on the cake of just unrelenting frustration for Cookie in this race. All of the runners at some point went through the same problems with finding that next progression item. Ended up being powder found in Green Pendant Pod. Led them to the book, which allowed them finally access to desert, finding the Mitts on Land Molus, and everything really fell into place from there. But there was a good 45-minute stretch where they were more or less stuck, unable to find the next item that was really going to take them forward in the game. Smight, unfortunately, struggling the most in that regard, as it took him a while to remember the magic bat.
Looks like Cookie is getting closer to finishing off Ganon. Did fire an arrow the wrong way, but again, when nerves are involved, you've seen that dot done. You know that you're, playing to finish at this point. The whole temperament of a run changes.
Yeah, I don't know if any of our runners want to hop in for an interview. I don't have chat available to get to them. I also don't know if we have a race that's ready to start up and we need to get out of here, so I'll defer that to a more administrative person, I guess.
GG to Cookiepocalypse, finishing right around 1 hour and 55 minutes. Still a very respectable time, as Smight is taking care of Ganon with the double and is doing quite a great job. I mean, the great thing about Smight here is that he really just kept on playing very strong throughout after his points of frustration.
Yeah, very professional finish for Smight. All things being equal, you probably look at the time he spent not going to Magic Bat when he had nowhere else to go and not being able to remember that. This was probably a very, very close race between him and JTB.
I find one of the boons about running, doing speed running on Link to the Past Rando is that you always learn something from every seed you do, and guaranteed Smight and will be making trips to that bat a lot earlier in his future runs should the opportunity arise.
So I'm going to go ahead and open up the schedule here to see what else is happening this afternoon. In the primary tournament, the main tournament, I should say, there's a race starting up in 47 minutes between Wild Anaconda and Big Dunka. It's on Speed Gaming 2. And that, I believe, is going to be our last race from the main tournament of the day. And then over on the secondary side of things, looking forward, we've got, I believe it might be another quad race, but no, it's an hour afterwards. We've got a race starting up at 8 p.m. Eastern between S. Diesel and Lord of the Synth. That's Group Z. And then after that, 9 o'clock, you've got Vault 127 and our very own Flaffykins. So a lot of thanks to our tracker Flaffykins for tracking. She's got a race later on today. And that'll be it for the secondary bracket as well for today.
Yeah, big thanks and a shout out going to all the people, not only our two trackers today who are amazingly splitting their attention among 4 different runners, Flaffykins in the name of DT, but Alvi, our restreamer, and everyone who's putting this tournament together. It has just been a fantastic effort by so many people, and GG to Smight as well. I'm going to throw that in there. GG to Smight as he's finishing up Ganon at about 1:57:57.
And it looks like we've got JTB in the chat now. So thanks for joining us, JTB and Smight, both joining us. First of all, congratulations to JTB. Hello, Smight. Congrats to JTB on your win. Smight, thanks for the good race. I mean, aside from the one slip up there you had, not quite remembering about the powder, you raced very well and a very good finish, I should say. So thanks very much.
I haven't done the regular powder in so long that I forgot you even could.
Yeah, you've been using the magic mushroom glitch on it.
Like, I didn't think I could get it without Titan Mitts for some reason, and I was about to forfeit before I remembered that you could.
Oh my, yeah. Well, JTB, congratulations, as I said, on your win.
Thank you.
There was, obviously, you racing the same seat as Smight there. I think you'll both agree there was a good stretch, sort of the midpoint of the game after you had Dark World access. You were dipping into Swamp. You tried Thieves Town, not a whole lot there. Really nothing that was going to help you in Skull, looking for that next progression item, and it took a long time to find it. Eventually getting into Pod and then going to the Magic Bat. What was the frustration level there for a while?
It was pretty high considering how 90% of the run was just Green Tunic and Fire Sword. Honestly, when I found the big key in Ganon's Tower, I'm like, I'm just gonna open this chest just to see if it would actually be a tunic, and of course, blue tunic right there. So honestly, progression items kind of took a back seat that time. I was just kept thinking, when is a new tunic or a sword gonna show up? And I just happened to be in go mode at one point. I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's just go and try to beat the game with only green tunic. So honestly, a lot of my focus was just on not dying, which is why I picked up a lot of fairies and potions just throughout the run.
I'm going to throw my GG to both runners here as well. And JTB, that was an excellent race. And Smight, I have to give you boatloads of respect. I saw at one point in IRC, you were thinking, do I forfeit, do I not? But when the light bulb went off about the powder, you really heroically pushed your way through. And I've seen so many of your races. You do a phenomenal job. So GG to you as well.
Yeah, GG Smight.
I thought it was still pretty good until that happened, honestly.
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't recall exactly, but I feel like you were one of the first runners to actually take the plunge into Pod, which, was just where the powder was. So, of course, that's going to lead you to the book. And then after that, everything really kind of fell into place. You get the Midsoft Land Molus, Eastern Death Mountain got the Flute, Fire Rod, and Mire Shed. All of that kind of fell into place rather nicely. But for a while there were so many locations you could dive into in terms of Thieves, Swamp, Heart of Skull Woods, Pod. And there's just nothing there except for the powder. So, I mean, that's again, watching that on 4 different screens, as far as 4 different racers, it was a lot of the same struggle for all of you. And you're all, pretty much doing the same thing, maybe in different places, but just looking for that one item. And eventually you all find it at more or less the same time, it seemed like. So it was a pretty close race.
I must have spent 10 minutes going over.
How did the other racers do?
Gus beat Cookie, finishing more or less the same time as JTB, honestly. They're pretty well saved. Cookie had a small lead in Ganon's Tower, which dwindled here and there, had one fall to Trolldorm. Not a great Aga 2 fight, but still ahead going into Ganon, and then a fall to Ganon as he was about to enter Phase 3 is what did it.
Oh.
And of course, we've seen so many races being decided, as I've been watching in this tournament, decided to that fall. So I'm sure that was quite a frustrating happening for Cookiepocalypse.
I was pretty afraid that it was going to be a Master Sword Ganon.
Yeah, it looked that way for a while until you got the Tempered in Mire, I believe.
I think it was. I know it was pretty late in the seed, when I was just clearing everything. Actually, no, I think it was Ice Palace.
Yeah, it was. You're right. And so you guys go-moded Ice. Flaffican's pointing this out in chat. You guys go-moded Ice, and that's actually the other tunic was there. So you would have picked that up had you not been going as fast as you could at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But, more or less, there were some divergences between the runners in different ways. But once the powder got turned into the book, it was more or less the same process for all of you. It just fell into place really nicely. So the seed, for a while, it was really nice at the beginning. You get Mirror, although it's not going to help you a lot at the beginning. But it was nice for a while, then it was a grind, and then it was nice at the end, is the way it seemed to me.
Yeah, I would love to ask the runners, and of course I always have those teachable moments. And JTB and Smight, every seed you walk away with a new lesson, a new strategy moving forward. What would you say would be your lesson that you walked away with from this seed?
You can go first. I have to think about that.
Don't race after you just woke up.
I guess this is good practice for learning no major glitches.
No, I just I need to remember the old stuff. Like you don't do something for a while and you just forget you can. Or at least I do. Because I definitely did not think I could use that powder. Like I looked at it like 5 times and I'm like, I can't get that right. And then I started going over the entire game again in my head, and I started visiting locations. Like, I didn't miss woodcutters, did I? I went all the way around these locations for no reason. They wasted
Imagine
so
if
much
you
time.
had to do Aghanim and just got
Yeah,
like
that's what I. For a while there, I thought maybe it was the fire rod and not a heart in there, and I went back and looked.
Yeah, everybody in chat at that time was really pulling for you, and eventually, you figured it out. And then after that, it was smooth sailing for you. You completed it, like I said, very professionally. So, I guess a lesson for you to take out of that. But the good news is that you're still 2-1. Doing well in your group. JTB, that improves you to 2-1. So both of you, doing well, positioning yourselves to advance to the bracket stage. So of course, not all is lost for you, Smight. Still a lot of good things you did in the run, and I just don't think that's a mistake you'll be making again. If there's any silver lining in this loss, it's maybe hardened your focus a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Like one time I forgot to even check the room in the desert where you bump with the boots. Never again.
Oh.
Yeah, those lessons are always the hardest to learn. I mistracked Meyer once, and that, of course, came back to haunt me for the rest of my runs. But I have to say, you guys are amazing runners, and everyone in chat, if you follow these runners, JTB and Smight, heroic folks in their group now, both equaling records, and also thanks again to our trackers. That's In the Name of DT and Flaffykins, and our amazing streamer, LV, who always provides great post-game music as well.
And thank you to our commentators as well. Thanks for doing this race for us.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for putting on a great show, and personally wish you guys best of luck moving forward in the group stage, and hopefully on to the bracket stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
A great game, guys. Good luck moving forward, and it was a pleasure offering commentary for two amazing runners as well.
All right, so with that, be sure to check out the remaining randomizers we have going on this evening. Again, Flaffykins racing on later, I think at 8 o'clock. Schedule is not at my disposal at the moment, but she's racing later. And then you've also got a main tournament race remaining for this this evening. And then, of course, randomizer all the time, like pretty much all day tomorrow. And then, of course, the next round or the next assignments for the main tournament will be released next week. So there's never any shortage of randomizers to watch these days. It's the golden age of randomizer.
I don't know if I should mention it here. We're about to do one because I'm running a tournament too.
You're in the main tournament?
No, I'm doing a 2 versus 2 tournament that is way overdue to finish, and we are about to start a game.
Okay, well, go ahead and plug. What channel is that going to be on?
It's on mine. I'm just gonna unmute my stream and load it up because those guys are waiting. So thanks for hosting. I'll see you later.
All right, thanks, Smight. Good race, and JTB, congratulations on your win. That'll do it for us here on this race, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for watching.